Hello and welcome to this video. In this video, we are going to connect to Microsoft SQL Server using SQL Server Management Studio. Let's open up the SQL Server Management Studio. So I'll click on Start and look for my SQL Server 2019 folder, and the SQL Server Management Studio should be in there. So this is my Microsoft SQL Server 2019 folder. I'm going to expand it, and inside there we've got Microsoft SQL Server Tools 18. So I'm going to expand that, and inside there we have the Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. So I'm going to double click to launch. If this is the first time you're launching the SQL Server Management Studio, it might take a while to launch. When the Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio launches, this is the screen you'll see, and it gives you the option to connect to the server. So it has different options here. The first is the server type. So in this drop down here, there are different server type depending on the component you would have installed. I installed just the database engine, so that's the server type I'm going to connect to. If you have the others installed as well, these components, analysis services, reporting services, or integration services, if you have these components installed, you can also select them as the server type to log into. Next, it's the server name. So because I've got SQL Server installed on my local computer, this is the name. So this is the name of my local computer, and this SQL Server 2019 is the name of my SQL Server instance. If for any reason your server name does not show up, there is a drop down here where you can browse for more. If you go to browse option, and if you click, there's a local server and there's a network. If you're in a network environment, then you click on network servers. But I'm in a local environment, so inside the local environment, you can see I've got database engine, which is the instance I installed. If I expand the plus sign here, you can see here, this is the full path of my server. That's my computer name, and this SQL Server 2019 is the instance name. So my computer has automatically detected the server name, so I don't need to add that. But if for any reason your server name is not populated, that is how you populate it. Next is the authentication. By default, you can use the Windows authentication to log into SQL Server. You can see here my username is grayed out and the password is grayed out. That's because I'm already logged into my computer. So SQL Server uses the same credentials to connect to the SQL Server instance. If I do not want to use the Windows authentication, there's a drop down here. If I want to choose the SQL Server authentication, then I will have to supply the login name, which is SA, and then the password, which I would have supplied during the installation of SQL Server. But I'm going to change it to Windows authentication. And then before I click on the connect button, there is an options tab here. I just want to show you. You don't really need to change anything here, but if you're in a network environment, your network administrators might change some configurations here or might want you to change it. But for the purpose of this video, and because we're in a local environment, there is no need to change anything. So if I click on this options tab again, it takes me back to the SQL Server connection button. So now I've got all my details in, the server name is in. I can now click on the connect button to connect to the SQL Server. So I give it a few minutes to connect. You can see it has connected to SQL Server. This area here is called the Object Explorer. The Object Explorer provides a user interface that is kind of like a tree view structure that you can use to manage the objects in each instance of an SQL server. You can also expand the pane, just drag it along. So you can see here, I've got some details highlighted here. We've got the name of the computer where the instance of the SQL Server is installed. And this is the name of the instance, SQL Server 2019. This is the version number, 15.0. And then we have the account that is logged in to the server, which is the administrator account for the local computer. You can connect multiple SQL Server instances and they will stack up here against each other. So if I wanted to connect to the same instance but using a different account, I can do that. So here, this icon here that says Connect Object Explorer, I can click on that and I can connect using the SQL Server authentication. So I click on the drop down, I select SQL Server authentication, and the username for that is called SA, and the password would have been the password I provided during the installation of SQL Server. I've entered the password. I can just click connect. I can see here is connected to another instance but with a different account. You can see here it tells me the account I've connected with, which is the SA account. It gives me the version number of SQL Server, the instance, and then the machine on which it is installed on. As you can see, it is possible to connect to multiple instances of an SQL Server. So to disconnect from a particular instance, while the instance is highlighted, there is an option here to disconnect. I just click on it and that will disconnect from the instance. If you want to disconnect to all your instances, you can just click on this icon here that says disconnect. That will disconnect from your instance. And then to exit the Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio, you just click on File and there's an option here to exit. In this video, I showed you how to connect to an instance of SQL Server using SQL Server Management Studio. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.